Right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday, a beautiful sunny day in Vancouver, British Columbia. Um, so far, just a few people are here online. So Michelle's here. Good morning, Michelle. And Irina's here. Good morning, Irene. Um, yeah, let's just jump into where we were yesterday. So we had we'd come to the end of the Roman Republic. We were kind of transitioning into the empire period with Augustus, right? And we said that even though he wasn't kind of a real emperor because he didn't really hold the office of emperor, he kind of acted as one because of all the special powers that he had, right? And we said that he will, whether he kind of meant to restore the republic or whether he meant to be a dictator or whatever his intentions were, they're not quite clear. But he did create a real separation between the sort of democratic republic that Rome used to have, although granted it wasn't functioning towards the end of the Republican period, but there was, even though the republic wasn't functioning well, there's still a pretty clear break between that state and the state of Rome after Augustus. After Augustus, there will always be kind of someone in that position who has, a significant amount of power, right? The power of tribune, control of the treasury, control of the army, the first person, like we may as well say first man because it is all men, the first man of the Senate. There'll always be someone like that. And again, we said that there are numerous emperors that follow Augustus for the next 400 or 450 years or so. Like I mentioned, we don't have time to deal with all of them, and it's probably not worth dealing with all of them. Some of them are more notable than others in terms of times in history that they rule or what they do during their time in office. Some of them, by all accounts, are really good emperors and they administer the Roman Empire very well. Some of them are complete disasters as emperors and as human beings, and if you read about some of these guys, you will not be able to imagine worse human beings than some of these Roman emperors. So yeah, it's a real mixed bag. Some of them are fantastic. Lots of them are meh. Some of them are just horrendous excuses for people. But either way, Augustus sets up this new sort of governmental system, and yeah, tons of emperors follow him. We were talking about the beginnings of Christianity, because again, we said Rome, Greece and Rome, I don't know if they gave us a lot, but we inherited or borrowed a lot from Greece and Rome here in the West. And one of the things that also comes out of that period is Christianity, a major world religion. And what I said yesterday was that it's probably doubtful that Christianity would have been anything without the Roman Empire. So if Christianity had not found its way into the Roman Empire and spread throughout Rome, and the things that happened, if they did not happen, I doubt any of us would really know what Christianity is. If it survived, it probably would have been a tiny group of people, maybe in what's now kind of modern day Turkey or Syria or Lebanon or Israel, tiny group of people worshiping this guy named Jesus Christ, and nobody, people would barely know about this group. But instead, it's a major world religion, and part of that has to do with what happens to it inside the Roman Empire. So we read the textbook here yesterday just a little bit. We said that there were some primary sources for early Christians. There were 4 Gospels. Anyone know what the Gospels are? Mark, Luke, Matthew, and John, right? So 4 Gospels written by these 4 guys at slightly different times. They all tell the same story. They tell the story of the life of Jesus. All of them they're mostly the same, but they have some different details. If you've read the Bible, you'll see that each story is a little bit different, but they're broadly the same. And we also have some early writings from, we mentioned the Passion of Perpetua and Felicity. What? What?
Have to run.
You had to run? Just like in football practice? So the passion of Perpetua and Felicity, these two women who were imprisoned and executed for their faith. Perpetua, I think, wrote a diary and that got published. And we know a lot about the Christians from Roman writers as well, right? So there were Roman writers like Livy and Pliny and who am I forgetting? Ovid. There are sources about the early Christians from the Roman perspective as well. So we can kind of see the Christians from both sides, right? How the Romans saw them and how the Christians kind of saw themselves. But these two kind of worldviews were really opposed to each other, Christianity and kind of Roman religion or Roman society. And in what ways were they different? In what ways were they kind of opposed? In what ways were early Christianity and Romans kind of opposed? How did their ideas about things differ? Can you guess? No? Tell me the right answer that you know. I'll guess. Sorry? Sorry? Okay, so first of all, the Roman religion was polytheistic. They had lots and lots of different gods. Christianity only has one, right? Nicholas mentioned that Christianity is an apocalyptic religion, right? And so an apocalypse is kind of an end of the world kind of event. And so the Christians believe that, yeah, the end, you see those guys with signs on the road, the end is near. But early Christians were like that. They thought the end was near, right? They thought that Jesus was going to come back. There was going to be a day of judgment. People would be sent to heaven or to hell. The earth would be over, and then everybody would live in heaven for eternity, I suppose. So the Christians thought that the world was going to end soon, right? So you had to be ready. The Romans didn't think that at all. They didn't have any sort of conception that the world was going to end. In fact, Rome's often called the eternal city, right? So the Romans weren't thinking about an end. They were thinking about something that was going to continue for forever, right? In what other ways was Roman and Christian ideals different? Yeah, there was. Yeah, the Christians put their God before all else, right? Before social hierarchies, before political loyalties, before anything else, right? God was the only thing, right? Whereas the Romans, it almost seems like, yes, they worshiped the gods, but they almost did it for their own purposes, it almost feels like, right? Like they wanted Rome to be prosperous and strong, and so to do that, we'll have to make sure we keep the gods happy. So let's sacrifice over here and, make sure that the gods are happy, and then we'll get all the things that we want, right? And so it's almost like a very transactional relationship, right? You give us, if we are the gods, you humans give to the gods your offerings and respect and do the proper rituals, and we will give you what you want, right? It's kind of a transactional relationship, right? But the God that the Christians are worshiping isn't like that, right? It's not necessarily about sacrifices or getting what you want. It's about love, right? So the central idea here is that God loves everybody. And so, you can be open to accepting that love for yourself, right? That's kind of the central idea. I don't know that we ever hear about Jupiter loving the Romans or Mars, right? No, Mars doesn't love the Romans, right? But if they worship him and give him the appropriate sacrifices, he will bless them, right? So, I don't know, it's kind of a different way of thinking about the relationship between humans and gods, right?
Their gods are like mostly human, has human characteristics.
Right. Yeah, their gods are very human, right? Sometimes they're jealous and angry and upset, and sometimes they do bad things, but the Christian God, not like that, right? He's kind of this perfect being. We never hear about God being wrong. And in fact, to suggest so in later centuries would be blasphemy, right? Would be to insinuate that somehow God was wrong would be like a crime against the church, right? Whereas here in ancient Rome, yeah, the gods do bad things all the time, right? They get angry, they get jealous. What's that?
Which is like, for the like from other perspectives to Romans, that's questionable.
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah, and that's exactly, if you remember, that's exactly what Socrates was saying, right? Is something good because the gods love it, or do the gods love it because it's good, right? So Socrates was openly questioning not only the nature of good or evil, but whether the gods could make a mistake, right? Could a god like something that was in fact not good, right? Because gods like different things. Different gods like different things. So how do we know what's good and bad? And can a god actually love something that is not good, right? Socrates was doing this. Some of the ancient Greeks were doing this. But again, that's not part of the Christian worldview, right? God is not to be questioned, right? He has a plan for everyone and everything. And if you don't understand it, well, it's beyond the comprehension of humans to understand, right? He works in mysterious ways, as they often say. Anything else? Ways in which the Christian ideology or the Christian worldview differed from the Roman worldview?
Since Romans have multiple gods worship, they should each one have temples for them, whereas Christians have only one church. Even like they have many churches, but they all relate to one base.
Yeah, so I guess the early Christians are a little more, I guess they were a little more centralized, if you will, right? Because they definitely only had one God to worship, but also early on there wasn't very many of them. And it sounds like most of them were kind of poor, right? So kind of people at the lower level of society, they were, that's who the Christians were. So they probably didn't really have money for a church anyway, right? They were probably, praying and having religious gatherings, in people's homes, sort of thing, because they were very small at the time. I thought of a couple other ones. The Romans were used to worshiping gods, right? But to Romanize, it looked like the Christians were worshiping a guy, right? It looked like they were worshiping Jesus, and of course, for a believer of Christianity, we know that Jesus is the Son of God or a manifestation of God. He's not a regular person like you and me, but to Roman eyes, it looked like the Christians were worshiping some guy, right? And some guy who was executed as a criminal, right? And so the Romans are like, ugh, I don't know about these people, right? This religion, these religious people running around worshiping this guy who was executed. Don't know about that. Weird, right? The Romans probably would have thought it was weird. Yeah.
When we are talking about the early Christians, do we mean by them when Jesus was among them?
Yeah, we could probably say that, although the period in history that we're kind of working through is after his death, right? So Jesus is born in what's now Israel, but used to be Palestine. He lives there, he preaches there, he dies there. And after that, after he dies, his disciples or apostles or followers, whatever you want to call them, start to spread his ideas, right? And they spread them throughout Palestine, what's now Israel. They don't really, what's that?
Still Palestine.
Palestine, yeah,
Still.
yeah. It's true. They don't really, those ideas don't really catch on in that area of the world, but then they start to catch on in other places. And so that's where we heard about Paul, who is a Roman citizen and a disciple of Jesus, and he travels throughout the eastern part of the Roman world. So he travels through what's now Turkey, which was full of Greek city-states, and so Paul sort of preached and converted people in all those city-states. He wound up in Rome eventually, which I think we're going to see in the video very shortly. And so we're kind of looking at, Jesus dies in about, let's say 36 AD, give or take. I think there's a little bit of discrepancy about when he was crucified, but I think about 36 AD. So we're talking about maybe like 40 AD forward, right? Yeah. So the early, the early part of this millennium, the AD millennium. Does that help? Time-wise? Yeah, okay. So yeah, but some of these early followers, people like Paul, were actually people who knew Jesus. Like they were his friends, they were his followers. So we still have there are people running around the Roman world who do have a direct connection to Jesus. Right. And so we watched the video. I asked you some questions here, which I don't think we got a chance to talk about. We only watched 10 minutes of it yesterday, but who are these Vestal virgins? Do you remember that? They are, yes, what do you mean the mother of Rome? Yeah, so the one version of the story, I think there's a few versions, but one version of the story is that the god Mars, the god of war, slept with one of the Vestal virgins and gave birth to the twins, Remus and Romulus, the two who were eventually raised by a wolf and then founded Rome, right? So the Vestal virgins are kind of worked into the founding legend of Rome, right? But they continue to exist, and what do they do? Or who? They what?
The fire thing lit.
Yeah, they keep the fire thing lit, right? So there's this eternal flame, if you will, in the temple of Vesta, and the Romans believed that fire had been going since Rome was founded. So this flame was going for hundreds of years, same fire burning. And the idea was that the flame went out, that was a horrible omen for Rome, right? Something bad would, Rome might be destroyed. And so these Vestal virgins, their job was to tend the fire in the temple and keep it burning all the time, forever. And so I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it ever went out and they quickly started it again. I assume so, but the idea is that the flame would never go out, right? Yeah, so these women are chosen by the Pontifex Maximus, the head priest of Rome, and they serve for 30 years, right? So 30 years they live in the temple, they tend the fire, they, as is indicated by their virgin title, there's no sexy time for them, and they keep the fire lit, right? I think we've kind of covered number 2, right? How might the Romans have responded to early Christians? Can we maybe just add to that? Did they, in the video, what did they say about how the early Christians might have been thought of by the Romans? Um, yeah, they probably thought it was weird that the Christians only worshipped one God, right? So that probably would have been a little confusing to them, right? And actually, we heard about in the video that this is kind of the neat thing about polytheistic religions is that they tend to be pretty flexible, right? Because they have lots of gods already, what's one more, right? And so we heard that the Romans worshipped all of their own Roman gods, right? But they also worshipped Isis, who was, we talked about Isis when we talked about Egypt, right? So some Romans worshipped Isis, the Egyptian god. Some Romans worshipped Mithras, who seems to have come from the Near East or from Mesopotamia. And so polytheistic religions kind of absorb other gods in there without too much difficulty, right? But monotheistic religions don't, right? Because there's only supposed to be one, right? One of the things that Yahweh says in the Old Testament, he says, and it's a commandment, thou shalt not have other gods before me, right? That's the first thing that God says to the Hebrews. He says, there are no other gods before me. I'm the only one, right? And so, again, that's a really different conception from the Romans, who are used to lots of gods and kind of absorbing other gods as well, right? Like Isis and Mithras. What else might they have thought? Maybe not much. They were a small group, right? They probably went mostly unnoticed early on. Do you remember what the video said about the Jewish people? Because there were Jewish people running around Rome at this time too. Do you remember what they said? Yeah, so the Christianity is to some degree, is a missionary religion, right? So when Paul left Palestine and moved across the Roman world, he was trying to convert people, right? He wanted people to join this religion. The Jews don't do that, right? Because again, their faith and their kind of culture and ethnicity and kind of genetics are kind of overlapping to a big degree. So being Jewish it's a faith, but it's also who you're born as a Jew, right? So the people's kind of cultural identity and religious identity overlap, and so the Jews aren't trying to convert people. They're there in Rome. They're working and doing business and living, but they're not trying to find other followers. They're not trying to convert people to Judaism, not the way that the Christians are. The other thing maybe we could say, and we said it already, was that the Romans probably thought it was a little strange that the Christians seemed to be worshiping a human, right? Like a real live human. The Romans were all worshiping these kind of mythical gods in the sky or whatever, but the Christians appeared to be worshiping a human person. And again, if you're a believer in Christianity, that's not who Jesus was, but to Roman eyes, that is who he was. He was just a guy. Okay, I think that's good. Do you want to keep watching? What's that?
Why not?
Why not? I can't think of a reason why not. We'll keep watching, and we'll see how this how Christianity continues to spread. And maybe I'll just flag one thing for you. It is very interesting how these two things interact. So we have kind of a new religion, right? So when Christianity arrives in Rome, Jesus has probably been dead for 10 years or something like that. So it's a very new religion. And the Roman Empire is going to enter a stage where it starts to decline. And so, very interestingly, the Roman Empire is going to decline. Christianity is going to become more popular. And the Roman Empire and this new religion are going to interact in very interesting ways, and they are going to change and be changed by each other. And so there's going to be a very interesting interaction between early Christianity and Roman society and the Roman Empire. And again, both of them are going to be changed by each other. Okay, but we'll let that play out. Any questions before we get started? No? Okay, let's see. Let's watch 25 minutes for online people. The video link and the questions are on Microsoft Teams. Let's watch 25 minutes, then we'll take a break, then we'll come back and see if we can see if we can answer some of these questions a little bit more. Okay, so online people, 25 minutes of the video, and then take a break, and then we'll come back, and so we'll see you in just a little bit. Okay. So, bless you. So, yeah, we hear a few things here. We kind of heard about Paul, but what can we say about him? Who is he? What? Who's this guy, Paul? A what? Oh, a crap. Yeah, he's gosh, what does he do? I don't know. I don't know what his craft is originally. But yeah, he's a craftsman, he's a tradesperson. What else is he? What's that? He's dead. Yeah, yeah. We know that he's dead, and he's executed by the Roman state. No, that's Peter, I think. Peter gets crucified upside down. Yeah, I don't know what happens to Paul actually. Well, beyond the fact that he's killed, I don't know how he's killed. He is, yeah. And what did we say it was to be martyred? Yeah, to be killed in the name of God, or to be, maybe more generally, to be killed in the name of a cause, right? So someone who's martyred dies for their ideas or for their faith or whatever it is. But here, yeah, Paul is martyred. He dies because he's a Christian, right? In an intolerant time. Yeah, so Paul's also an early missionary. He is one of the apostles. He's a friend of Jesus. He's a Roman citizen. I think he's born in a place called Tarsus, if I recall. And Tarsus is kind of a Greek city-state in sort of modern Turkey, but it's part of the Roman Empire. And so he's a Roman citizen, travels around, preaches, converts people. I think he gets himself in trouble with the Jewish authorities, and the Jewish authorities have him arrested by the Romans, and the Romans send him back to Rome for trial. And while he's there for 2 years, something happens. There's a big fire, right? So how does this fire affect the Christians? This fire of 64 AD. Yeah, they were blamed for it. If you wanted to use a fancy word, you could say they were scapegoated, right? So the Christians didn't set the fire, but they were blamed for it. I forget if it said it in the documentary, but there are some thoughts that actually Nero, the Emperor Nero, set the fire himself, or had it set, because he wanted to build a new palace, but there were all these buildings in the way, so he just had his people light the buildings and burn them all down so that he could build his new palace where he wanted to, and then he blamed the Christians for it. It's a jerky thing to do, eh? Right, so this fire set off a little wave of persecution, right? Lots of Christians are killed in all of the sort of creative ways that Romans like to kill people, sometimes crucifying them, sometimes dipping them in oil and lighting them on fire, sometimes putting them in the Colosseum and having animals attack them, or having gladiators hack them to bits. Of course, the Romans love all this stuff. It seems kind of brutal and gross, but that's the Romans for you. Why was early Christianity so attractive to women?
They had no rights to own any properties in their own women. Then Christianity started by them, where they started spreading, where the first woman who went home conquered.
Uh, just basically in people's living rooms at first. A church?
In the church, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah, she made like home church. They started religion, start spreading the religion. They started giving more rights. Their daughters to live where they felt like a woman.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a couple things, right? Like in Roman society, the public sphere is really for the men, right? It's the men who are doing the work, doing the selling, the crafts. In government, it's all men. The outside of the home is the world of men, right? But the inside of the home is the world of women, right? That's where they flourish, right? That's where women have power. And so lots of these early Christian gatherings are happening in the home because A, they're being persecuted out in the street, right? But also B, they don't really have money for temples or buildings or churches or any such thing, right? So they can't really afford to build any church or structure of their own. Plus they're being persecuted. So their faith kind of goes underground, right? It goes inside, and it happens in people's living rooms, right? And of course, who's in charge of the living room? Well, women are, right? Women are the ones who are in the home, taking care of people, and then as Baha mentioned, they're also the ones who are raising children, right? So women are converting to Christianity, and then they're raising their children that way. And I think the other thing you said had to do more with the spread of Christianity, right? But yeah, it's very attractive to women for that reason, and probably because early Christianity is so egalitarian, it's so equal, right? Everybody is the same in the eyes of God, right? God doesn't care if you're a rich or powerful person, and actually God actually doesn't like it that much, right? If you read, there's one line in the Bible, I forget where it is, but it said, somebody asks Jesus, a rich guy goes to Jesus and he says, hey, I'm really rich, can I still get into heaven? Or something like that. I'm paraphrasing. He says something like that. And Jesus says to him that it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And so, yeah, like not only is Christianity accepting of everyone, but they actually, they don't pay attention to status and economic differences, and actually it's more attractive to people who don't have anything, right? So in terms of how Christianity is spreading, it's very egalitarian. Anyone can join. As the academic woman mentioned, Dr. Hirsch, I think her name was, as Dr. Hirsch mentioned, you didn't have to pay any initiation fee. There wasn't a fee to subscribe to Jesus or to Christianity. You could just go and worship. Yeah.
That was not only for the woman converting to Christianity. It was for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sort of transitioning out, but yes. So yeah, nobody had to really pay to worship Jesus. So yeah, it was attractive to women because a lot of this activity was taking place in the home, and that's where the women happened to be. And they actually helped it to spread that way as well, right? Because they were in the home, they were talking to their kids, they were going over to, maybe friends of theirs and staying at their house and, helping to convert those people. And so there's a lot of kind of religious activity that's happening in people's living rooms, right? Kind of under the surface, out of the eyes of the public. And yeah, women have a big role to play in that. I think what I meant by number 7, I might not be clear with that question, but what causes another? What's another kind of excuse for the Romans to start killing Christians? The fire was one of them. What was the second one they mentioned a little bit later? Yeah, so the Romans, we said that the relationship with the gods, the Romans have a very transactional relationship, right? I give so that you may give. I will give you this sacrifice, and so now you will hopefully give me what I want. Hopefully, right? That's how the Romans interact with their gods. But of course, the Christians won't do that, right? And the other thing that's happening in this period is not only worshiping the gods and sacrificing to the gods, but you have to worship the emperor as well. So there's almost kind of a religious cult that forms around the emperor. So you have to kind of offer things to the emperor and to the Roman gods. But why won't the Christians do this? And? Yeah, right? So again, people who are polytheistic, it's a lot easier, right? It's a lot easier to sort of make a sacrifice to another god, right? Even if you're, even if you really like to worship even if you like to really worship Mars, the god of war, you can make an offering to another god and it's not a big deal, right? Because you believe in other gods anyway. But monotheistic religions are different because they say there's only one, right? There are no other gods before me. And to worship another god is really bad news, right? Do anyone know your Bible stories here? You remember when Moses comes down from Mount Horeb with the 10 Commandments? What does he see? Yeah, the Hebrews have lost their faith in Yahweh and God. They've created a golden cow, a golden calf, and they're dancing around and worshiping the cow, right? And Moses loses his marbles, right, at these guys. He throws these tablets at them, which they break, but he throws it and says, "What are you doing? There are supposed to be no gods before Yahweh, and here you are worshiping this golden calf." And he kind of freaks out, and there's a whole thing. But yeah, the Christians can't even do it, even not mean it, right? So for polytheists, it's like, okay, yes, sacrifice to the emperor, okay, and now we can go on with our lives. And they can kind of fake their way through it. But for the Christians, there's no faking their way through this, right? They will not do it. They won't even pretend to do it. And so, again, they are guilty of breaking the law because everyone has to make sacrifices for the benefit of Rome and for the benefit of the emperor. And the Christians won't even pretend to do it, right? They're just like, nope, cannot do it. There are no gods before ours, right? Okay, so how does Christianity start to spread up rather than out? Yeah, so the early Christianity for the first few hundred years or couple hundred years, Christianity is a religion of kind of poor people, right? People who don't have a lot of power or status or money, like they mentioned in the video, fishermen, craftspeople, slaves, women, poor people, all people on the bottom of society. But as their numbers continue to grow and grow and grow, people who are trying to gain power take notice, right? Here's a lot of people who are joined together. And if you can somehow put yourself on top of all those people, you will have power, right? You will have their support. And so it becomes very easy for some Romans to convert to Christianity and then say, hey, I've got a lot of money. Let's build a church, a real church, right? A real building, or let's do this, or let's do that. And so some wealthy, powerful Romans are able to gain more power simply by putting themselves on top of these communities of Christians, right? And you do it by converting, and then you use your money for the cause, right? Whatever the cause of Christianity needs, these people will provide that money, right? And so, yeah, you start to get these priests, you start to get these bishops that start to appear. This hierarchy in the church starts to appear, right? Where you have priests, and then you have bishops. And who do you have above that? Anybody know? Currently? You got priests, you got bishops. I think you've got archbishops next. Then you've got, this is Roman Catholic. Then you've got cardinals. And then you've got, in Roman Catholic, then you've got the Pope, right? So you've got this hierarchy structure in Roman Catholicism, and what kind of this will eventually evolve into Roman Catholicism. This sort of hierarchy, and they point out in the video that it starts to mirror the hierarchy of the Roman state, right? You've got, the emperor, or whoever you want to call him, at the top, and then you have consuls and magistrates and senators, and you have this hierarchy of the state that then gets kind of put onto the Christian religion, right? And Christianity, when it starts, doesn't have a hierarchy. It's all just a bunch of people, right? People getting together to worship God and worship Jesus, right? That's all it is. But when these rich people start adding themselves into the mix, they start creating this superstructure, this hierarchy on top of Christianity where there's religious leaders in different levels of status and power, right? So there's none of this at the beginning, and then it gets created as more wealthy Romans kind of jump into Christianity and create sort of a power structure on top of it. Does that make sense? Are you sure? You're kind of looking at me like, ugh? They do. They do. And the hierarchy part comes from the Romans, right? The Romans inject or create a hierarchy within Christianity that didn't exist beforehand. Does that make sense? Yes, no, maybe so. Okay, so there's 10 more minutes of this, I think, give or take. So we'll watch the rest. It will talk about Constantine in this last 10 minutes. Constantine will be important, and you'll see why in a minute. So for online people, we'll watch the last 10 minutes, and then we'll talk about Constantine's contribution tomorrow morning. Online people, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to set you free. Watch the last 10 minutes of the video, then we'll talk about it tomorrow. We'll do the same thing here in class, okay? So online people, we'll see you tomorrow, and have a nice afternoon.